planetary circulations. We've learned about mesoscale things like the thunderstorms and all. We've looked at fronts, and we've even looked at tropical weather. Now we're going to just take a look at a forecast. Putting that all together, how do we write a forecast? Uh, we're going to look at the next 3 or so days here in a general forecast for the eastern part of the United States. Well, if I'm writing a forecast, what I've got to understand first is what's going on now. So, what is happening now? We have a cold front stretching through central Virginia, up into Maine, kind of stationary along the Kentucky-Tennessee border, and a nice high sitting right up here over the Great Lakes. Looking at temperatures, it's cold. For this time of year, there's 12 degrees up over Lake Superior here, 23 here in eastern part of Canada. Temperatures in the United States are in the 30s behind this front. Out ahead of the front, they're in the 40s, but there's another front all the way down, and it moved all the way into South Florida. For this time of year, that is really far. So that tells you that this is fairly cold air mass. So that's the first part I would be looking at. It would also say, oh, with this weak front, maybe a few clouds as it moves through, but not much. And then we'll have to see what develops with this later as it moves around. So this is just a overall composite. This high probably is going to be, typically we know they move to the east. So we're going to make the assumption that it's probably going to be moving east-southeast. So now that we've looked at the broad picture, shall we say at the surface, what's controlling things aloft is what the next question is. So if I want to look at that, I'm going to look at the 850 millibar chart to start with today. That's about 5,000 feet up. It shows a general lowering pressure, which all the cold air would indicate you would want to have here. So contours dip because of that cold air, making the wind come out of the northwest. You can see the geostrophic balance right here on the winds we've already learned about. And you can see how they're pushing south here around the high, pushing the colder air in. As a matter of fact, 850 temperatures are, here's minus 6 degrees Celsius right there. For this time of year, that's fairly cold. 0 degrees is well down in even south of my neighborhood. Winds are coming off the Great Lakes here a little bit, but the Great Lakes aren't picking. It's not like there's probably a lot of moisture there, but there might be some coming in. So maybe I need to think about a few clouds in this part of the area where the winds are coming off the Great Lakes. So now that I've looked at this level, notice I haven't talked about the western part of the country. If I go out here, I can immediately see winds coming in off the Pacific into the mountains in California. So I am definitely looking at precip out there. Winds being pushed up and all. But let's take a look back to see if we can look up a little higher in the atmosphere. Maybe we'll go up to 300 or 250 millibars. Well, immediately again see low pressure aloft, fairly cold air up over Hudson Bay, and the winds 100 knots right here. It's a good jet streak. There's another 105 knots here, another one, and even here's 145 knots. We have very strong jet moving through the area right now. Good trough here, pushing all that cold air in. So all of that's telling me we're probably going to be keeping it cold for a little while until this moves out of here. Not a lot of precip. The best chance for lows are well to the north with this kind of a system. So not much that way. And we can see that the winds become more west to east here, kind of where that second front's hanging up at. One other thing I might want to look at is a morning upper air sounding. I want to know what's going on in the vertical. So we can go back and actually get that here with this. So if I look at their forecast tools and I go to upper air, observe sounding analysis, and here is the morning soundings for today. It immediately starts me with Oklahoma City. That's where they're located. So, but even looking at that, I can see there was some kind of a cold front that's been through. Morning chill here, warmer air aloft. But let's move over to our neck of the woods a little bit. Let's look at Pittsburgh. That is cold. Look how cold the temperature gets here, just above 500 millibars. Temperatures keep dropping. The winds have been hanging up, it looks like. So this is probably the top of the coldest air right in here. So we have that first front way down in Florida and the second one here. Notice trying to find a tropopause is hard with this, maybe up in here at 100 millibars. And the winds are all out of the north and west, especially in the surface right here where that, I said the front was. You can see the winds are northwest here, northwest, and they become more westerly. So that does make sense. It's at the top of the front right there. So we have lots of cold air in the east. This is almost Arctic air for this time of year. So at least for a little bit, it's going to be cold. How this changes in the future will be an interesting thing. So let's take a peek at just what's going on satellite. I like looking at satellite because I can see a lot of the country and get an idea of how things are moving. For example, I hadn't paid a lot of attention down to Texas, but there's a lot of moisture that looks like it's come into that area here. Talking about clouds coming off the Great Lakes. Well, there they are, just like we said. And that front that's going through us, moving south here, little line of clouds with it. All things that would be put in a forecast, right? And the main front, well offshore here. Lots of convection probably along it. And you can actually see here over the Gulf where the clouds are kind of drifting to the south and west. So that is the end of that front. If you were on the other side of it, it'd be quite mild and almost tropical. And you can actually look at that low off the west coast and see it's moving a little bit this way as well. So what have we learned? That today's weather probably is going to be well below normal temperatures. A few clouds coming off the Great Lakes and hanging up in the mountains of West Virginia. Even more so coming across Virginia here and all. So, but not much in the way of precip and not exactly a warm, pleasant, sunny day. That's just today. Now I want to look what's going to happen in the future. We assume that high would be moving to the east with time. We make the assumption that trough is not going to be staying here. It's going to be evolving. This is where the numerical models come into play. I want to know what the numerical models think about how this pattern is going to change. So one of the things I would always look at is I would go up into the pressures, and let's take 250 millibar winds, and we'll just loop those 4 days. And this is a high resolution model. You can see that trough that's over the eastern United States here. Notice the trough that was on the west coast begins to come in. That, because it's moving, says the pattern's not blocked or slowly moving and progressing. We notice this trough here, strong jet right here. And the winds become not real zonal, but there's a nice ridge developing over the Midwest. And you can see what may become a block developing actually over New England with time here. We can see this developing and deepening over Maine, and it's not moving very fast. So it's a little bit to the east of most of our area, however, which keeps the colder area to the east of us, and this ridge may especially speak into Ohio, maybe the western parts of West Virginia, may not get to the East Coast with this. So it also will block this low from moving too far and gradually weaken it as it's coming east. And you can see here the winds are still out of the north, not much in the way of moisture, at least for the next 4 days anyway. So that says there's not a whole lot of precip that might be happening. So let's go back to this and look at the next thing, which I want to look at 850 millibars surface. Let's see how it's changing. So what it's doing, we can see the high that was over us move to the east like we thought, and 850 millibars warmed up. So we had some warm air coming aloft. It actually showed that with a little bit of precip coming across here. So we're just looking at a loop here at the same stuff. And right there is the precip developing on Wednesday as the warm air is trying to come back in. And now we're developing a bigger and bigger low up here, just pulling the cold air and keeping it centered right in this area. Notice that as we got further, pushed everything to the east, we're beginning to pull out some moisture here in the Gulf of Mexico at the end of this forecast into the central United States. So let's just go to the end of it here. You'll notice the Gulf of Mexico has become a little more open, bringing more moisture up into the central United States. Eventually, this could lead to a lot heavier precip in this area. And we're also kind of blocked things a little bit up here with this low now, 850, and even all the way up at 250 millibars. So we're looking at probably some pretty strong low here, 992 millibars, with that trough that came in off the west coast, helping to develop. So lots of warm air is going to be pushing up in the Midwest as the week goes on. More and more moisture moving in. So as the week progresses, we're going to begin to warm up. However, if you're in New England, forget it. You're not going to be warming up probably very well. May even be seeing some snow at times. So this is how we would go about a forecast. One of the interesting things too, looking at this, I want to go back. I want to give you an idea of just what options are available here. I mean, I talked just one model, North American Mesoscale model. There was a GFS model, Global Forecast System model. Then there are the ensembles. And I can say, oh, let's look at the spaghetti. And the spaghetti pattern is really a mess because all we're looking at is, oh, let's just look at 500. And we're going to loop it for a whole lot of time. And you're just going to see, oh, everything's nice and organized right now, right? Here's the trough in the east. Here's the trough in the west. And notice how further and further, more and more confusing this whole pattern becomes. It kind of shows a zonal flow across the United States with time, but then you really, towards the end of it, how can you tell what's going to happen, right? That's where the problem begins. We can make a pretty good analysis at the beginning, but with time, everything just gets more and more confusing. So that is the ensemble aspects. We also have the ability to look at forecast soundings. Say I wanted to look at Pittsburgh here, and I want to know what's going on, a forecast sounding here. And let's just go 24 hours out. Here's the north forecast sounding. It shows the cold air coming in at the bop here. The wind's even becoming northeast. And I can move along and see how that atmosphere. Notice right in here in the mid-levels, I may be getting some clouds here. Nothing down low, but maybe I'm looking at some mid-level clouds. So all of this goes into writing a forecast. And finally, if I really want to go back here, there is some other aspect that I haven't shown you yet, where it's all statistics. And this is a statistical forecast of current temperatures. So if I wanted to look at a statistical forecast 12 hours out, here's the current national temperature forecast. And we have the temperature marks over here. You can see where it's warmer. You can see where it's colder. And this is statistics based off the model forecast. So all of this is what goes into play into writing a forecast. So I hope you got a little bit out of this. Let me know if you have any questions.